and I'm glad to have you in this webinar along with Jeff. Jeff is a practitioner who had spent over 3 decades in this industry. Um, Jeff is the principal of Lingford Consulting. Over the past 2 decades, Jeff has worked with a wide range of organizations, public and private. He brings a wealth of hands-on experience, and he had witnessed firsthand how this digital transformation have been unraveling in the marketplace. What makes Jeff truly inspiring for and his skill levels, sharing his experience on this topic that we are going to share today. So without further ado, let me begin this session. Just a couple of housekeepings. If you have any questions during the presentation, please drop it in the Q&A section. At the end of the webinar, we will make time to speak to and answer some of it. With the webinar being recorded, we will attempt to share this link with the registered participants if you had missed it. So letting you all know that we are recording this webinar. With that introduction, let me hand it over to Dushi and Jeff. Over to you.
I will. Thank you very much, Jeff. So, hi everyone. Welcome to the webinar. What Jeff and I actually thought of doing is that we are going to make this a conversation between us so that you will gain. I mean, we can contribute more in that way. Jeff and I come from two ends of the spectrum. So I come from more on the strategy side. Jeff is very hands-on operational. So both of our experiences in this domain, if we have a conversation, would add more value than us just presenting what we know, right? So let's get on with it. Before starting, before getting on with the presentation, I want to clarify a few terminologies which are generally used interchangeably but had different meanings. So you have the word digitization, digitalization, and digital transformation, and these three terms mean three different things. The idea of digitization, basically digitization started in the 1960s and the 70s, where we started electronically storing data. We had electronic digital watches. So that was in a very early day. So that was the initial capture of information. So that's kind of an old terminology. Then came the idea of digitalization. So that is a process where we were using digital technologies to optimize our processes. So we were doing reinvention, or we were going through what we call the business process reengineering, and that's the process of digitalization. And what we are having today is what's the term? The term digital transformation. What it actually means is it's a way of using digital technologies to completely reimagine your business. So these three terms, even though they are used interchangeably, they have three distinct meanings. And what we are going to discuss today is about what digital transformation really means, and what is it about, and how your organization will get impacted by this. So there are a few insights which I would like to take you through. Actually, I have 4 insights which I really want to drive, which will give you some idea. The first one is that all industries will go through significant changes or disruption in the future, right? So actually you can already see many industries being disrupted. So if you look at the current level of disruption, the mean rate is about 0.51. And then you can already see industries being disrupted. If you look at the taxis, if you look at entertainment, you already see how digital has come and disrupted all these industries. Now, going forward, you will see further levels of disruption. You can see the mean level of disruption is shifting, and it has impact on different industries in different ways, right? For an example, the energy industry is actually poised to go through a massive shift with the new battery technologies that are coming in, with the push of EVs that are happening. And I was actually reading a news article a few days ago about how the battery manufacturers are now supplying their lithium-ion batteries into grids, right, and creating a much larger opportunity for the renewable energy sector. So the idea here is that it's very evident that almost all industries will go through a very significant level of disruption. And Jeff, do jump in and contribute, and you are seeing in practically what's happening on the ground. So yeah.
Yep, we'll do. And I should say too, Dushi, if anyone's got any questions, the Q&A is enabled or the chat is
Yeah.
there too. So yeah, but I'll jump in. Absolutely.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. So on the second insight is that if you so what this graph tries to do is that it plots the current level of disruption and the susceptibility in the future disruption. If you plot all the industries, right? I mean, I don't want to go. I'm not going to go into a much more detailed discussion about this. But what you need to notice here is that almost all industries are towards the right top corner. They are moving towards the right top corner of this quadrant, meaning that most industries are going to get disrupted, and that's being reinforced by this analysis as well. As I said, some industries are already what the takeaway from this is that some industries who are already being disrupted heavily, like say software platforms or high tech, they are in a much more they are in a much better position to handle the future disruption as they are currently handling a lot of disruptions. But some of the industries, let's say industries like energy, infrastructure, who are not being disrupted right now, who maybe who are a bit what do you say durable right now. When they move to the future, they are not ready, or because of the amount of volatility that you want to see, they will not be ready for that disruption. And what we are trying to say is that they need to prepare themselves for the future disruption, and they should be prepared what is going to come at them. The third insight.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Dushi, can we just go back to that slide?
Yes.
Just something that occurred to me is the health, because I do a bit of work in the health sector, and it's just fascinating. It never occurred to me until I saw that, and you explained it in that detail. That's like through COVID, like the things after COVID, when there are a lot of changes, like there were things that were happening. For instance, faxes. The health industry was still using faxes, right?
Yep.
And then there were things that just then shifted almost like overnight, where they were impossible before they became possible. But there's still, I agree, it's still like you see the health sector is still really struggling to. That's just what I see on the at the.
Yeah, taking on what you're saying, Jeff, if
Yeah.
you really think about things like e-script, which was very rare,
Yeah.
after COVID, it's the norm. And also
Yeah.
think about how do you
Yeah.
consult your doctor? I mean, the local regulation here is about
Yep.
you only have to see the doctor physically once a year. Everything else can be done online, right?
Yes, exactly.
Most of the consultations happen online. So that's the type of change that is happening in terms of the patient-facing area. And you could see similar levels of disruption that will happen in terms of personalized medicine, in terms of gene editing, or life sciences are kind of expanding in such a way that you will see people going to live longer. Those are much bigger changes that are happening in the background, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, good point.
Thank you. Sorry.
And the third insight that we would like to talk about is during COVID, the companies or whoever who adopted technology have actually seen their growth grow by 5 times, right? And that's the very important factor. So organizations who adopted technology during the pandemic or post-pandemic are seeing that their levels of growth is increasing twice, right? And I think, Jeff, you should be able to contribute. You are seeing this practically on the ground, even in public sector, how things have changed.
Yeah, I was. Yep, absolutely. I know we discussed this briefly. So I do a lot of work in local government, and one of the things that was really interesting. Again, we shouldn't keep going back to COVID, but at that point, when COVID hit, everyone just sort of I remember I was driving back from Mornington, everyone's cancelling training, but I had one council that I was on their staff training calendar, basically rang me the next week and said, "Are you going to move all your stuff online?" And I was like, I don't know. Give me a few days to think about it. So I quickly downloaded Zoom and tried to figure it out. And then I went back and said yes. And within like 2 weeks, I was training online. That council and another council were already prepped. And that was the interesting thing, because they were already, like, a lot of their staff had laptops already. Other councils hadn't moved that far. And they've just kept powering on. It's been fascinating to watch them. And Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. No,
And
one of the points, if I may add, Dushi, is they say necessity is the mother of innovation.
Mm,
Not that these technologies never existed, it's just that there was resistance to adopt it. And then there was this necessity that happened
yeah.
that, even though it's called a pandemic and there was a lot of negativity around it,
Mm,
but that was a change that made a lot of these enablers that became the necessity to the innovation to be adopted. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
yeah, so
yeah.
think about Jeff's own business, right? Jeff was physically traveling to multiple councils or multiple areas, and his
Yeah.
capacity to train was limited. And look at it now. He
Yeah.
basically opened up his business, basically probably grew 10 times, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff. So that's the
Yeah.
power of the change, right?
Yeah.
Things.
Well, I mean, probably the point to make there, Dush, is I'm based in Wodonga. A lot of my work is in Melbourne still. We're coming back to in person a lot. But yeah, now I'm sort of working overseas and everywhere from here.
Yeah.
Stand up desk in my office in Wodonga. So
Yeah.
no,
So
it's just interesting.
interesting. So that's the power of technology, and
Mm,
that actually shows the power of and that's basically proof of the growth factor in terms of adoption of technology. And the next one is something that I personally really like, and I'm very close to, is that we are at the moment living in exponential times, right? And what this let's kind of delve into this and see what this really means. Now there are, of course, we are talking about doubling in computing power, and there is also data is growing a lot, right? So what happening around us is that it's a phenomenon called digitization and dematerialization, right? Basically, what's happening is that we are in the process of digitizing everything around us, and we are making everything around us on an information base. So once something becomes information, the growth becomes exponential. Now, what this actually means, the contributing factor to all this is the computing power, then the amount of data that is available, and also the connectivity, right? Everything is connected. Now, the challenge, this is actually a huge opportunity. There was a book that was published in 2014 called The Exponential Organization, which identified that phenomenon in 2014. But yet, even today, people find it difficult to understand this. The reason for that is our human mind is generally we have been evolutionarily selected to think linearly. So if you talk about growth, we always talk about one step at a time. We talk about we decide our growth based on past years' performance. But companies like Google and Facebook and the T group, the T part, the group of T companies, they don't think like that. They look at growth in an exponential manner, right? Amazon is another good example. Facebook is another example. So there has to be a major shift in the way of thinking, and this is a challenge for leaders who have to kind of go back and understand how exponential growth works and how to tap into this opportunity, right? So that's another very critical insight that I would like to put out there.
yeah.
Now, even though we spoke about the opportunities and possibilities, right? We spoke about a few things. We spoke about how businesses are growing because of the adoption of technology. We are talking about the exponential times. However, there is a study that was published in 2022, which talks about 87.5% of all digital transformation endeavors are failing, right? And that's a huge problem, right? And then if you ask, so when you dig a bit deeper and understand why, there are a lot of reasons, but I think the key reasons that are highlighted here is that, first of all, you people or the leadership in businesses today understand digital as just a technology adoption, and that's a big mistake, right? It's just another event for them. Whereas digital transformation is actually a process, right? Your business needs to change over a period of time.
Yeah.
The other one is that the leaders the senior leaders of most of the businesses lack digital literacy, and that's a huge issue, right?
Yeah.
And that's why today there are short programs in terms of digital transformation at major universities who are trying to educate the leadership to understand what this is, right? And these are the real key critical factors, like basically thinking about digital transformation as technology adoption, and then also not understanding what exactly digital is, right? And Jeff, I think you can talk a bit here about your experience when you really work on the ground, working with employees and working with senior managers. What's your experience here?
Well, Yeah, thank you, Dushi. So often, I'm just, part of a staff management program, might get called in just, to train a group, right? Or I'm on this just normal training sort of calendar. But well, I actually really love it when the leader of the organization or their particular leader of that part of the business comes in, because they sort of get it. And that's actually, it's much more impactful is what I would say. So a couple of weeks ago, I was working with HR department, people and culture team, really, but it was the leader of that people and culture team that wanted me to come in and talk. In this case, it was about digital tools, but they wanted to embrace, teams and channels and how do we coordinate all this together and manage our information across the business and our tasks and all that sort of stuff. And that, like, it was really effective. And I'm still now 3 weeks later, and after this call, I've got to respond to a few queries, because people are sort of like, oh, I want to get my team to take advantage of SharePoint and Teams. How can I do that? So that's really powerful for me. And the other point I would make is I just a couple of weeks ago, worked with a different industry, social, it's a CEO anyway of an organisation in a particular area, just working with people and vulnerable people in communities. And she was a CEO of a small organisation, right? She asked me to come in regional and just work with her organisation on some, just digital tools. And that was fine. So we did that, and it was, sort of reasonably adopted. They were fairly well backward in their embracing of that. But now she's, about a year and a half ago, she got promoted or took another job as CEO of a much larger organisation, similar organisation, but much larger, more resources. And she's like, now I'm going to get you to come in and train the leadership team. And I have been doing that. And they are really embracing it. But the interesting thing was, she wasn't actually that tech savvy, but she saw the possibilities, right? And she's she's really like, and because she's the CEO, people are just naturally following, right?
So
It's really fascinating.
That's what, yeah. So that's a very interesting point, Jeff, because when you have a CEO or a head who has who's digitally savvy, or basically has understanding of what is digital, then the entire organization changes faster, right?
Yes.
But once you don't have somebody like that, it's actually a huge challenge, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
So moving on. So there are, why this? What is the so apart from the reasons that we explained earlier about the failure? Let's break down this a bit more, right? So there are 3 mistakes that organizations make. One is that there is an over-optimization. There are over-optimistic expectation in terms of how fast the system has to be implemented and the timing, right? So as I mentioned earlier, if you consider the technology adoption as an event, then you have timelines and you have scope, right? So that's an over-optimistic view of a digital transformation endeavor. Then it also boils down to poor execution, right? So you don't really prepare everybody well. You prioritize technology over people. You don't look at the adoption, right? And also what happens is that this is something that I've seen again and again and again. You use the wrong metric to measure the wrong thing, right? If you use ROI to basically measure your digital transformation, then it actually really doesn't work. Then basically you're using a 20th century metric to measure that is something you're doing in the 21st century. So these are some of the challenges that I have personally experienced. Then also the pace of transition, sometimes it's too much, right? So how do you pace yourself? So these are things that are going wrong, 3 mistakes that are happening. But how do you really mitigate some of these things, right? So that basically you can talk about an existing organization when it wants to change. It goes through 3 stages. So first, you kind of modernize your existing infrastructure. So you put your fundamentals in place, right? You optimize your operations. You use digital tools to basically make your operations work on digital tools. Once you do that, then you actually have to spread these digital tools across your organization. So that's a organization-wide transformation needs to happen into digital, and I'm sure you can contribute into this. And lastly, once you do that, the real transformation happens when you are on your digital platforms, that you create new business models and make use of these new digital opportunities, and that's the real transformation part. And this is where people go wrong. So adoption of technology is not transformation. Optimizing your operation is not transformation. Transformation happens only when you actually create new business models, new revenue streams, and transform your business into something else. And I'm sure, Jeff, you can actually contribute. Like, you can see how the diffusion of technology inside an organization works because you are on the ground.
Yeah, but just a thought that occurred to me, like what I often see happening, and again, I'm often, as you say, at the ground level, looking up, and my past is in a senior leadership role, so I sort of understand that. But often what I see, which I don't know if this is true or not, but often I see that this is just pushed off to IT. Like,
Yeah.
okay, IT because it's tech, yeah, off you go, and then they implement a system, and the IT, this is nothing against IT because I love IT. My son's into it. I'm an embracer of technology, but the IT people are like, oh, okay, we better train people, and so they come in and do high level training, but it's not really, it doesn't really work. And so I think whilst IT people are very, very, good at, putting in infrastructure, but they don't understand how the end user needs to grasp this and use it.
Yeah.
Sometimes. So there's a like a disconnect is what I see.
Yeah, that's the problem that we are discussing about, not understanding prioritizing technology over people, right? You need to understand how they adapt and how the systems are getting adapted in the organization.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting analogy about how digital transformation can be compared. This is actually from the author Tony Saldana. He talks about the idea of digital transformation is like a aircraft takeoff and taking off and flying, right? What happens is that you have a limited runway. So you have your runway, and you need to reach the right momentum to take off, right? So if you go fast, you overshoot the runway. You go slow. If you go too slow, you are unable to take off, right? So you need to keep this in mind. You have timeline, and you have to have the right amount of adoption, the right pace of adoption to actually take off and fly, right? So that's something that you can keep in mind when you're thinking of how digital transformation really works, right? So another challenge is that one of the things that in digital transformation, that so this is, if you look at this study, one of the biggest challenge that comes out as in digital transformation is the cultural barrier. It's about the people. It's not about, in this list, technology is actually quite later, right? So this something, Jeff, that you mentioned, spoke about earlier, how the IT department basically does the plumbing work, but people don't know how to use the water, sort of a thing, right? So that's the problem, right?
Yes.
So it's a huge issue, and this is something that needs to be addressed, meaning that the organizational leadership needs to understand how they would make their employees also to adapt to the new technological environment, right?
Yeah.
This is another interesting slide. So this is talking about the people. As you can see here, the technology is changing fast than the people can adapt or learn the new technology, and this is a huge challenge, right? So reskilling employees is going to become a big problem in the future, and this is something. I mean, it's a problem already, but this is something that needs to get mitigated, and this is what actually Jeff is doing, trying to reskill and try to reskill employees to work in the new digital environment. And Jeff, I think there's an interesting story here that you can say about the digital islands that you see, right? So it's like the Big Bang, right? When IT got adapted, people started, different planets got formed, right? People started using different tools, but now suddenly you are seeing that they are unable to communicate with each other, right? So talk about that experience a bit. It's a very funny story.
Oh, well, I've got a few stories I could show, but I'll just say that one thing that's often, I've got a room of 10 or 15 people, whatever. Everyone finds a way to get things done, right? So that's what I will say first up, because they're in a position, they just find a way. It might be the old way, it's not the smartest way, but they get it done. And so I think that I've now used the term work smarter, not harder. And I always used to avoid that term because I used to think, oh, it's not that good. But actually now, as I'm showing people what to do and I'm getting feedback from people on what they do, this is what I see all the time, right? So this would be that digital island. Like, everyone creates their own little way of getting it done. I don't know if that quite encompasses what you said, but that's what I see. And, I would just say that just on this change, I'm just staggered. Like, I guess, if you're looking at my picture and looking at me, you see that I'm more in the more mature age bracket. Let's say that, Dushy, or let's just say I'm old, right? But like the change is happening so fast, all right, and people just can't keep up, mostly because they don't understand, right? I would say, that people don't know what they don't know. So they find a way, but they don't know what's possible, is another way of putting it. And I think, one of the things I was just reflecting on this morning, Dushy, and I don't know, I know this is not just about Microsoft, but Microsoft is a good example of just like there's so much happening, and and so much change happening. And the old days of, like we had Office 2013, and then in 3 years' time it would be Office 216. And, like we had a lot of time to prepare for the new version, right? Now it's subscription based. It's like, it's happening so fast that changes are happening invisible. Like those in the know what's going on sometimes, if you keep up with it. But I think that hasn't helped. Like it's just technology is changing so fast that people really struggle to keep up. Even IT people struggle to keep up. I'll be honest with you.
It's a challenge. This is the challenge that we are going to face in the future, Jeff. This space is not going to stop. It's going to increase.
Yep.
So we need to be prepared, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So just a question to the audience. Just if you have any digital fears or if you have any digital hopes, just list it down and ask questions from us. It will be very useful to discuss about some of these things. We can actually contribute on that. So change is happening all over, right? So change happens, the environment changes, world has changed. This is not the same world that existed like 30, 40 years ago, right? And there are many factors that contribute to change. But what the biggest contributor to change today is technology, right? The advancement in technology. And this is actually growing at an accelerating pace, and that is going to change a lot of things around us. So it's a very interesting, the interesting image here. So we generally want to feel, generally 50, 60 years ago, change used to feel like what you see on your right-hand side. But change today is actually what you see on the left, right? Now that's the impact of change. And this is a huge issue for leaders and businesses, because they, in fact, the interesting thing here is that if you look at the right-hand image in the rows, there is a leader who's focusing on the team. In the other board, nobody even know who the leader is, right? And that's the type of change that we are going through. And learning to navigate this is the skill that you need to develop in this period of time, right? And Jeff, anything that you have to say here?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I might just add is that, like, it's really when you implement change, I see it come down at an organizational level. Like, it's really hard to predict how it's going to fall out, but it doesn't. Well, we might talk about resistant to change later, but like, it doesn't help just putting your head in the sand and going, no, go away. Like, I see that on an individual level, sometimes on a team leader, manager level, more on an individual level. But as I was only training a group late last week, and I made the comment, which I made quite a few times, is like, we can't put our head in the sand. This is going to change. Like, there's no point going, oh no, I don't want that. It's happening around you. We have to either embrace it or move out. I don't know. It's hard.
I understand. So let's look at what all this means to an organization. So this is what I want to really come at, right? What does it really mean to an organization? One of the things that you are seeing here is that the fundamental assumptions that a business has about itself is changing, right? Now, if you look at, let's talk first about Uber, right? Uber is a taxi company. Generally, a taxi company about 15, 20, 30 years ago, if you're a taxi company, you had certain fundamental assumptions that you need to have a fleet of cars, You have a way of having the drivers. There is a way of obtaining license, and there was a regime that was there, and you had certain fundamental assumptions. And Uber came and completely disrupted that. So the fundamental assumptions that you had about the industry completely changed. And that's the same thing if you look at Airbnb. So the hotel industry worked in a certain way. There were assumptions. There were, if you want to go into a country, you need to you need to first acquire land. There are regulations. You build rooms. Airbnb came and completely changed that. Now, how many of the leaders today are actually questioning the fundamental assumption of their business? This is a huge issue because they don't want to do that because they are so used to those assumptions. And this is happening in the car industry as well, where the fundamental assumption of the car industry, what a car means to people and how a car is manufactured, is changing so drastically. The traditional manufacturers are struggling, right? And you get companies who are battery manufacturers becoming the largest EV car producer. So that's a huge change in the fundamental assumption of the industry. And that's a problem, right? And what does this lead to? It leads to basically not fear of missing out, but really fear of becoming obsolete. And that's the problem that you're seeing if you're not adapting and changing yourself in this digital era. And if I'm sure you have something to add here, right? You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So this was a new one for me. I knew FOMO, but I had never heard of FOBO. And I remember when you talked about it, I went, what? Okay. So, yeah, that really resonated with me because, again, I see it with the end users, all right? And often when people introduce themselves, they'll often say, oh, I had someone do this yesterday to me. I'm not very tech savvy, or what's the other word they use? I've got a technophobe. This is the other one I often hear, right? So I think, the interesting thing is well, one of the things I try and do is go, okay, well, let's take on a bit, all right? Just take a little bit. Let's do a little bit of change. And maybe then, you step up a bit rather than being absolutely frightened of it. The other thing I see often, Dushi, and I don't know, Emil, you've probably seen this, but like I'll just, when I'm learning something new, like just recently I had a client that wanted to understand Microsoft Loop, right? And I knew it was there. I'd used a bit of it, but I thought, no, I have to really deep dive into Loop. But I spent like 2 days just like immersed in Loop. And then I was like, oh, now I understand Microsoft Loop, right? And similar to AI, that was so as a personal example for me, AI. Okay, so I'm looking at AI and I'm thinking, yeah, that's probably for someone like you, Dushi, maybe Emil, a younger person's role,
No.
right? I'm 67 and I'm like, is that really a bridge I want to cross, right? But I attended this conference a couple of weeks ago, Digital Workplace Conference, about a month ago now, and it was all about AI, of course, as it is these days. And I started to go, you know what? I'm just going to give this a go. And now, like a month, only 4 weeks into my journey, I'm like, okay, I get how I can use it, all right? So for me, it was like being at another end user and going, okay, I have to I don't want to be obsolete. I mean, at some point I'm going to be, but maybe not just this point, right? So I don't know if that's helpful.
Okay, so moving on. So what do we do about it, right? What do we do about this? So this is a model that I came across, and this is something that we use. So there are 3 things. First of all, how do you really do it? So what's the model that you can use? So there are 3 angles to this. First of all, you need to have a very deep understanding of your business. That's something that is really required. You have a deep understanding. Then you know what business are you in, what are the opportunities, what are the threats. You have to have this deep understanding. And you also need to have an awareness of the digital technology, right? You need to be aware of what's happening. And I actually coined that, I use a term called Industry 4.0 ontology. You need to understand what's going around you in terms of the digital space. And once you do that, then you need to, before adopting technology, you need to have kind of a very clear strategy of what you want to achieve and then bring the technology in. So that's the kind of a process that you need to follow if you really want to embark on this journey of digital transformation. So finally, these are like five lessons, right? Now, one is that basically you need to understand, figure out your business strategy. What do you really want to do, right? By adopting digital, what is it you're trying to achieve, right? And then a second lesson is that you need to leverage your insiders more than bringing in the flying doctors, right? That's something very important, because you must understand that you have to make sure your existing employees or existing resources are in the position to adopt the technology and they have intimate knowledge about the business. And there could be new opportunities that you can tap from them and then adopt the technology with them. So that's another important lesson. But three is that what digital has done is that it has given a much more, it has enabled organization to build a much more intimate relationship with their customers. Meaning now you need to design the customer journey inside out. Sorry, outside in, meaning of you should understand what the customer really wants, and then you build the journey based on that, not from inside out, from what you feel is the right path, right? So that's something that you need to do. The fourth lesson is that another critical factor is that employees' fear of being kind of obsolete or being redundant. And that's, I think, Jeff, you can touch upon this because this is a huge fear. And lastly, you need to have this startup mindset, like new ideas. How do you innovate your business model? How do you change things? What new product ideas that you come? That Silicon Valley startup culture is something that you need to slowly infuse, either by by acquisition of others from outside or bringing in new employees. But some way that has to happen, because the companies who are doing this will overtake you, right? So Jeff, let's talk about a bit of these employees' fears. I think you can add something here.
Yeah, well, I think I've probably made quite a few points already about that. I was just looking at your point 3. Firstly, I do see a lot of that. Like I sometimes I come in and they've done that. A lot of local governments are doing this now, trying to redesign the customer experience from the outside in. So they're changing that. And I think that's working quite well from what I can see. That lesson 4, the fear of being replaced, I don't often see that so much at a user level. I think I just see people being, there's fear, there's no doubt there's fear, but not of necessarily being replaced, of just like the fear of being left behind, that sort of thing. They see that. And I mean, I think something we can do is just try and this is sort of what I try and do, bridge the gap. Like, and I'll give a simple example, all right? But you could maybe apply this to obviously a lot of different things. But when I'm training people how to use digital note taking, like in OneNote, usually that's my favorite. I used to say to people, in fact, I go back through some old slides, you can ditch your paper notebook forever, right? And then I go into training, and guess what? I've got my paper notebook with me. And I recognized after a while that was like, oh no, because people come into training, it happened just a couple of weeks ago, with their big notebook. Now, this is just a scrap bit of pad, but they'll come in with their A4 notebook and like, everything's here. Like, this is my Bible. Like, I need to, and this, I guess say, only happened a couple of weeks ago. Now, what I now say to people is, actually, you don't need to ditch this, but you can still embrace, let's say, digital note taking and scan your paper notes into a page in your OneNote. And the funny thing I've noticed, and I've never really designed it this way or never intended it to be like this, but what's happened is, and this, as I say, just happened a couple of weeks ago, people then go, oh, all right then, well, I'll give it a go. And I show them how to scan using their phone, scan your notes, and it's like that. So like that's a game changer, and that's what I hear.
That's a very interesting example, Jeff. Yeah.
What's that?
That's a very interesting example.
Well, yeah, just bridging the gap, if you like, between 4 and maybe 4 and 5, I suppose. Like, they're embracing it because it's still, I can still validate what I'm doing, but it's not. I can take a step forward, and that's what I see often. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Okay, so this is the last slide. So here, what I wanted to show is that organizations and individuals go through these phases, right? Some organizations are sitting in their comfort zone. They are not feeling the competition, but they are completely, as I said, their head is in the sand, right? They are completely unaware of what is going around them, what is happening around in the environment, and how they're going to get disrupted. But then, of course, some are in currently seeing the change. They are fearful, right? And some have already adopted, and some are thriving. And I'm sure this is also related to an individual as well. And I'm sure, Jeff, you would have seen this, how people have progressed. And you just gave an example of how people are adopting themselves to use technology in various ways. There's no right or wrong way. It's just that the adoption, right? And I'm sure you can also add to this, right? How you in your personal experience when you train, how people go through these phases.
Yeah, and probably what that story I told was should probably told that here after this slide, because that's probably more appropriate. But I have seen that. So when I start my training, I often ask people, what do you want out of this training? And I do get that. I see people that are in that fear zone, like, no, I'm not, I don't know how I can use it. My challenge is obviously to get people in the learning zone. And that's what I often do, is try and bridge a gap. And I'll go back to something I said before. People don't know what they don't know. So there's this fear of the unknown. But when you explain, you can do this, and if you can make it simple enough and practical enough and get them to try it, then they actually go, oh, I can give this a try. All right. So that for me is obviously you've got to move people out of the fear into the learning zone. The way I try and do that is just explain simply how this might work, and then get people to try it. And then people will take that small step. And but it is, and I've seen people go from that learning zone to the growth zone, and that's what I'm dealing with at the moment. And with this team, a HR team or people and culture team, they're out like, we're moving forward, and they're going to impact their organisation. I'm not working with the senior leadership, but I am working with the leadership of that people and culture team, and they're going to move the team forward as a result of going from fear to, like, let's try this, to, right, we understand this, let's move. So I don't know.
Organizations also go through the same phase, right? You can see that, as I explained earlier, right? So so Emil, that's what we had to cover, and I hope that there was learning and if there are any questions.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, it's time for the Q&A. We are right on time for that part of it. Dushi will keep the slides on so that we could navigate between the different parts where required. So one of the questions that we love technology, Jeff, Dushi, and myself as part of New Gen. We believe it had got the transformational power to really go and make an impact to an organization, people working in that organization, and for the planet, and for the profit of the economy, right? So we sincerely believe in that. But conversations that we have with small to medium businesses are the ones that prompted us. We need to help them, simplify this, right? And they feel, we are a 25-man organization making decent margins, running a business for the last 5 years. We have been all right. We do use technology tools, but we don't really see ourselves in the quadrant of Uber and Airbnb and all that, right? So what does this mean to us? Do I need to really change? Because I think we got the point of sale system is all right. We got a good CRM that's working all right. We got an inventory management, that's also working all right. Now, how do you see a conversation getting into a point where we would enable or empower such an organization? I like to sort of open the forum for discussion around it. For a small business, what does this mean? You have seen this happening over a period of time. Any thoughts around it, Jeff?
Well, I do work with a lot of SMEs, and by the nature of the organisation, that it's often the leader that's then engaging, and they want to move their organisation forward. So, and they're in a better position to be able to do it. But again, I think what I see, the ones I've been brought in to work with them, it's the leader that sees like there's possibilities, but they don't have a way forward. And again, I'm not, I'm not, Dushi and yourself are probably more, more inclined to be able to, or not a more better place to actually to comment on that. But what I see is, again, a similar thing. They've heard about this, they've heard about that. Can it do this? Like a great example would be Microsoft Planner, right? They want to manage tasks across the team. Can we use Planner? Can we use Trello? Can we, how can we do it? And they're looking for some sort of, task management system they can use across the organization. And then again, you have to just show people what's possible and get them playing with it so that they can then take it away and, implement. But at that point, sort of like I walk away because I'm not in a position that you are in to go, okay, we can come in and help you with that. So I don't know what, I might put it back to you, Emil, or maybe Dushi.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
what would you do? Like, I've got this, I'm there. I want to, do this across my sister. How can I do this across my organization? That would be,
Jeff, so let's go back to the early model that we spoke about, right? So it's
Yeah.
about, so there are three aspects, right? First of all, you need to adopt the adoption of technology, right? So
Yeah.
if an organization has already adopted certain technologies, so that's what Emily is saying, they're using a CRM, are they actually optimizing everything?
Yeah.
Is that operation optimized? I think for an SMB, the fundamental aspect of a digital transformation starts with operational optimization with digital tools, right? Because unless the leader wants to see the organization to grow, they will be basically, being in that digital optimal stage. But I think, Emil, to answer the question, the way that you need to approach an SMB is that help them to optimize their business with digital tools.
Yeah.
That means they may have a CRM which is in one platform. They may have an ERP system within another platform. Sorry, the accounting system in another platform. Their POS can be somewhere else. Are these tools working together? Are the data coming together? Are they seeing insights from that data? What are the tools they are using? That's the approach that you should take for them. Once they understand the benefit of these tools and how digital can actually help them with the business optimization, then the entrepreneur or the leader of the business should then, if he is capable of thinking expanding the business, right? That's the next stage because you already optimized the business. So that's the approach that you should be taking for an SMB rather than telling a story of you can be an Uber. The fact is that if you don't have the dream of becoming an Uber, then you won't be, right? But you need to first start off optimizing your
Inspiring.
operations.
Yeah. This is what we do at Newgen Consulting Australasia is as part of our program today as well. It's about inspiring the leaders, right? And it's not a myth or a trend that you are seeing, but it's in essence how it's going to be impactful for your business. That's what you are looking at, and how impactful is it going to be for your future. So, and that's the conversation we like to simplify. It starts with that inspiration process of trying to dream your business at a different level. And once you have got that vision, that's where we can work with you in putting together a roadmap, helping them, breaking the little tasks down, and helping you to implement and achieve the tool optimization. And also, more importantly, if you remember from Dushi's presentation, it's about the model, the restructure or the model remodeling of your business is the game changer. And that's how some of these big organizations have made it to work for them. So first is, as Doshi clearly said, it's about inspiring work. I mean, we help leaders to get inspirations about where their business could be, right? And then helping them optimize those tools, and finally giving them that remodel or helping them to remodel their business where they can get into 10x growth in the next 3 years. That's what exponential growth that we are speaking about. So this session is about that, and there were questions that were in, and one of the things it's about questions that came about what tools should they be embracing on for the digital transformation. So these are some of these questions are specific to your business, and how best we could help you answer them is by working with you, because we are not here to promote or position a tool, but to answer the question about how do we understand the digital transformation within our industry, within our business, and what's it means for us. So that's what this concept is about. So we'll take some of these offline and we will have those conversations. But any other points that Dushi and Jeff you would like to, probably we got a few more minutes you like to share? Yeah.
I was just going to say, Anton's asked a good question.
Yeah, there is a question from Anton. So to answer that, it's like, so what can small businesses learn from large businesses? There are many things, but I would fundamentally say the ability to grow, so ability to see the whole world as a customers, that is trying to achieve exponential growth. That's something that you really can see. And also innovation in business models. So large organizations, let me take an example. The biggest innovation, let's take Apple as an example. If you look at what Steve Jobs did, was he was very good at products, right? Apple came up with very good products. But the real innovation in Apple came after Tim Cook, which did their business, right? Apple became a much richer organization after Tim Cook took over because he innovated the company's business model. It changed the business model. And he actually also innovated in the organizational structure. So those are lessons that even SMBs can follow. You don't have to, even though they don't want to dream to go global, they can actually dream of changing their structures, innovating with their business models, new revenues. So that's something that they can really learn from large organizations.
And if I could add something in there, and then Emil, maybe you want to comment. I understand the question that you've said, Anton. I think smaller businesses are in a better position to move faster. The problem with a large organization is it's a big ship to steer, right? So I would actually, Anton, think about it like this. You can learn a lot of lessons from the failure of larger organizations, in a sense, because it's such a large ship to steer, and it goes off in different places. I reckon a smaller organization is better positioned to go, well, let's not do that. Let's do what Emil said, understand what you're trying to achieve in a small business, and now let's look at how we move forward, what technologies are going to suit us, but redesign a little bit, as you've done, Emil, at the system level, and then train the people to do it. All right. So, but it starts, I think, at the top, and that's where a small business, I think, is better positioned.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for that addition, Jeff. Look, everyone, thank you for attending today's session, and we really value your time. And I hope that we have left some thinking process started in your minds that you can probably start working through what's on the horizon for your industry in terms of what's the change looking like. If you like to be inspired, contact us and we will help you guide your way through on it. And harnessing the power of technology, how the economies and organizations and people are changing, harnessing the power of technology. I hope that we have shared some insights around it. Going beyond the digital tools is a key learning or a message that we would want to leave with you. It's digital transformation is not just about tools. It goes beyond that. And I hope that we left that message with you. And avoiding some of those challenges that you might face while you are on your journey. Either you started, you are contemplating, or you are at a stage of your journey. We shared some of those challenges that you might encounter, and skills for the future. That's the addition that Jeff brought in, and where Jeff can help you as well. So as we wrap this session for today, we like to thank Jeff and Dushi. Thank you so much for the time that you have put in and the insightful information. And thanks everybody for attending. We will also be having the recording made available for people who have requested and registered. And once again, on behalf of New Gen Consulting Australasia, I would like to thank you. And there's many more series to come. And stay in touch with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Emil.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Thank you.